Tu is the essence of the soul. And it is in your hair. It comes out from your hands. When, like, for example, when you're making something with your hands, whether it's food or you're carving something or you're, making something with your hands, part of your Tu is going in there. Oh, also it's in your clothes. So, when I was a little kid, whenever we traveled someplace, my mother would always look around to make sure we don't leave anything, like a shirt or shoestring, things like that. You make sure you take everything, because if an unhealthy energy touches it, see, that tone of whatever it is that belongs to you, that tone is always connected to you. So, for example, let's say you flew to Moscow. Let's say you're in America and you are flying to Moscow for whatever reason. And then your trip is done and now you're flying back to America, but you left a t-shirt over there. That t-shirt has your toe in it. And meanwhile, let's say you're back in South Dakota now. What is that? 8,000 miles? Is that a good estimation? I don't know. But let's just say that's how many miles apart it is. Let's just say it's 8,000 miles distance. But your t-shirt's still in Moscow. So let's just say the hotel staff see it, and the person says, this looks pretty cool, I'm going to keep it. So that person takes it home and washes it and wears it. So let's say on the weekend that person goes out and is getting drunk with his or her friends, and then they get a little bit too drunk, and they're walking home, and the guy passes out walking. He falls down on the ground. He's passed out. Yeah, he's unconscious. He's laying there out in the middle of nowhere. Now let's say an unhealthy energy comes near it. That is going to affect you, because it's your tune that's in that shirt. So even though you're 8,000 miles away, suddenly you have a weird feeling and you feel sick. It could be anything. Maybe you're nauseated, or maybe something is wrong. So that's why it's important to not leave things lying around because of something like that. That's an example of tone. So you have to really be careful concerning your hair. Like when you're combing your hair, and you can't just leave it everywhere. Because unhealthy energy can touch it, and it could affect you. It's still connected to you, yeah. Whatever it is, whether it's a dropped hair or a piece of clothing or something you made. Let's say you made a bowl and you left it someplace. See, your tone went into that when you made it. So if something unhealthy touches it, it's going to affect you, because your tone is connected to your soul. That's really important. So when you have a best friend and you're going to gift that person, in our way, when you make something for that person, that's really special, because you're giving a part of yourself to that person. It's showing that other person that you trust him or her with your life. That's a really special thing. So we have a ceremony called Hunka. This ceremony came to the Lakota people. In our nation, we have 3 dialects. Let me explain this real quick. There's Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. The best way I can explain this is by using an expression. In Lakota, whenever you witness something really good or or you want to say, gee, that's really good, or whatever. In Lakota, you say lila washte. It's not washte. We don't have the A sound. Because you see that a lot. You hear that a lot on YouTube and in places like that. And that's incorrect pronunciation. It's washte. Lila means really, and washte means good. So lila washte, you would say. That's if you're speaking Lakota dialect. If you're speaking the Dakota dialect, you're going to say dida washte. Hear the difference? We say lila, Dakota people say dida. Now when you're talking with the N dialect, Nakota, they're going to say dina washte. So Dakota and Nakota are very similar. They use the D quite often. Lakota, we don't have the D sound. So that's the differences. But we can understand each other. Like if I'm talking with a Dakota man, and let's say he's telling about something he did. He's telling a really big story. Then at the end he says, Chin ikche wima chashta chahecha yedo. He will say, I understand everything he said. The only difference, see, he said, Wima chashta. That means, I am a man. Lakota people say, Wima chasha. There's a difference. Yeah, they say, Wima chashta. We say, Wima chasha. See, there's a little tiny difference. And his ending, he said yedo. We say yellow. See? So even though he spoke the D dialect, I understood him perfectly. No problem. So there's no misunderstanding. It's just these small things. That's the dialects. Okay? So in one of the Lakota groups long time ago, anciently, there were these two warriors that got lost, and they were from, some people like to say Ree. They're Ree people, Ree Indians. They live north of our territory, and they're an enemy tribe. So these two Ree guys, they were lost. and they were wandering around, and Lakota warriors saw them. So they circled him. And long time ago, Indians had a sign language. So this is how different tribes talk to each other. And they use the sign language. It's really complex. There's several hundred hand gestures in this Indian sign language. But they know how to communicate like that. So this is how they were talking to each other. So these Ree guys said they were trading with another Indian tribe, and they got lost. They were following a river, and they were traveling at night, and they realized they took a wrong turn. So they were supposed to go north, and instead they ended up going west. But it was nighttime, so they didn't see. So they told them, they said, we're peaceful. We're not here to battle. We are just traveling. We were trading, and now we just want to get home. And we mean no trouble. We don't want trouble, they said. So they said, okay, come with us, and we'll talk to our leaders, and we'll see what can we do. So they brought these guys back to their camp, and the holy person there, he went out and cried for a vision, because this was a special situation here. And this is a deadly situation, actually. So the holy person, he did a crying for a vision ceremony. We call that hambletia. These guys would say hambletia. See, they use a D instead. We use a L. It's the same ceremony. So they did this ceremony, and this holy person got a ceremony from doing the hambletia ceremony. He got a new ceremony. It was an adoption ceremony. So what they're going to do is two Lakota warriors, their families, each one is going to adopt one of these Ree guys. And so it just means they're relatives. It does not mean they're members of the tribe. It does not mean that they become Lakota. It doesn't mean that at all. That would be disrespectful to say that. It just means they're relatives. That's what Hunka means. So in this ceremony, there's a lot of New Agers listening to this show, so I'm just gonna take certain points that back up what I'm talking about concerning this tune concept. Okay? And even then, I'm not giving you all the information concerning tune. But important information, okay? There is sacred information concerning it too, but I'm not going to talk about that part because that's not for public airwaves. That's ceremonial information. Anywho, part of the ceremony involves exchanging shirts. And the person who's being adopted into the family receives a new name, so that the family that's adopting will call that person by their new name. That's part of what happens. There's other things that happen too. For example, they feed each other. The person who's adopting the other person, he's going to feed his new relative. Then the new relative feeds the adopter, so to speak. There's more that happens. It's a really beautiful ceremony. It lasts all day. Yeah, it's an all-day ceremony. But when it's over, there's new relatives. So this is what they did. And the Ree guys were totally fine with that. So there were two Lakota families that the Hunka, these two Ree guys. The Lakota families, they gave gifts to these Ree guys to give to their families. So in other words, the Lakota family were gifting the families of these two Ree warriors. So they had a bunch of gifts with them. So then some Lakota warriors went with these two Ree guys, and so they have to pass through Dakota country and then Lakota country. So these Ree guys were really in a tough shape. There's two other big groups from our nation that they still have to get through to get to their homes. So when they were coming, they were met by a Dakota warrior group. And they surrounded them, and the Lakota people told them what happened. They told them about the ceremony, and they said, these are our relatives, and we're escorting them home. And when the Dakota people heard this, they thought, gee, that's a pretty good idea. So they said, come back with us and let's feast, yeah, and share this story with our leaders. I think they need to hear this. So they brought them back, and by this time these Ree guys are scared shitless because they're in the heart of enemy territory, yeah. So they're really this is how necessary this ceremony was. So they met with these Dakota chiefs, and the Lakota warriors told them what happened. And these Dakota chiefs thought that's really cool to make a relative, even though they're from an enemy tribe, that we make a relative and there's peace. That's really cool. And so from there, they let them go through. Then now there comes the most difficult part, which is the Lakota country. Because Lakota people are generally known as a warrior society. And so it was going to be really hard to get through Lakota country. So the Lakota boys were really, they had their hopes up. So it didn't take long, yeah, and they were surrounded by a huge Lakota warrior group. Again, they repeated the same thing that they told to the Dakota people. And the Lakota guys were, hey, that's kind of a cool idea. So the same thing happened. So they took them back to one of the Lakota groups and they told the chiefs they're the same thing. And they really liked that. They said, that's really a nice thing. They said, we're going to send some Lakota warriors with you to escort you all the way. Because there's lots of Lakota groups. Yeah, this is just one that they came into. So this way they would know that this is a peaceful thing that's happening here. And it's a sacred thing that's happening too. So they were able to make it all the way through Lakota country up into today what's known as middle part of Canada. Because our country was huge back then. So we took them through and right away a bunch of Ree warriors came out. But they saw that the Lakota group was pretty big, so they didn't attack. And then these two Ree guys came out and they spoke to their leaders and they told them what happened in their language. So one of their leaders came out and used sign language. And he talked with the leader of these Lakota warriors with sign language. And he said, this is really, really a good thing that happened. And the Ree families accepted the gifts and they were really happy that something like this happened. So from then on, these two Ree guys, they had Lakota names. So they made visits. They visited each other. The families made visits to each other because they're relatives. So whenever this was happening, it was peace. So Hunka is also a ceremony of peace. So here, like I said, they give each other their shirts because it has their tone in it. So these Ree guys, they were wearing the shirts of the Lakota warriors, and the Lakota warriors were wearing the shirts of the Ree warriors. They had each other's tone, which was saying they were trusting each other with their lives. That's how special this was. So this ceremony is a really beautiful thing. And today, that's really been shortened down to what they call the naming ceremony. This is just about 10 minutes long. But anciently, this was an all-day ceremony. And it's because of that Christian brainwashing experience that I told you about earlier. That's how come this ceremony shrunk, because people forgot. The priest said, that's not good, and that's from the devil. That's why they stopped doing it. And now people just put a feather in somebody's hair and sing the direction song and then give them a new name, and that's it. That's, the Hunka doesn't mean anything to a lot of Lakota people anymore because they don't know the fullness of it, of what I just told you. There's more to it than what I told you, but this is some important concepts that can be shared with the public. But when you're adopted, it does not mean you are Lakota. It does not mean you're a member of the tribe. It just means you're a relative. There was a musician here in Berlin, and he was a white guy. And there was a guy from the Yankton Sioux Reservation. His last name was Zephyr. That's a French last name. That's not an Indian name. This guy did the Hunka ceremony for this musician here in Berlin. Right away, this Berlin guy started considering himself a member of the Yankton people. I talked with him and he was saying, yeah, I'm a relative. He said, I'm a Yankton now. He said, I'm Dakota. He said. See, that's false. That's false. That's not what Hunka does. It does not make you a member of the tribe. It makes you a relative of the person who's adopting you, but it does not make you a member of his tribe. And that has to be understood. That's why I'm saying that, because Most people really misunderstand that. And a lot of non-Indians, they want to go to the reservation, find an old person, give him $50. Hey, can you adopt me? And give me an Indian name at the same time. And since there's so much poverty on the reservation, they do it. So then they come back to Europe and they say, "Oh, my name is Hokshila Ho Washten. I'm a Lakota now." That's bullshit. No, you're not. You're still from Switzerland. Accept it. That's what you will always be. And what's wrong with that? Nobody's better than the other. No race is better than any other. We're all human when it comes down to it. But anyway, this tone, this is part of the soul here. And so sometimes people try to do things to manipulate the tone. And this is dangerous because whenever you're trying to manipulate something in a way that was never meant to be done, that is an unhealthy communication. Which means whoever's doing that is going to get fucked over. Because what he's sending out in doing this is going to come back to him 4 times as strong, kick him in the ass. So this is not a good thing. This is really unhealthy when people try to do things like that. I'll give you another short story. I try to make it short. Back in 2005, there were all these European shamans that they were having some kind of a convention in Austria. And the organizer of this event, he wanted me to talk, one of the main speakers, to all these shamans. So I said, okay. So we traveled down to Austria. And it was very beautiful. Yeah, it was up in the mountains and the Alps. Tyrol is the area. And hey, holy man, I think I walked into a cuckoo's nest, basically. Crazy people. Dressed, they look like, are we at a Grateful Dead concert? I was thinking. Jeez, I never saw so much craziness up until that time. So I did my thing, and then the organizer, he's from Hungary. He was saying that there's a way to heal people in which you do something to their soul, and that you're injecting an energy into them from yourself. But that's really dependent upon, is this shaman a good guy or not? So he's saying he's a good guy. So he had this demonstration where he injected an energy into this person, and the person went gaga for a few minutes. It went kind of crazy. And then this shaman said, when you don't know what you're doing, this is what happens. He said. And then he said he's going to move the energy in a certain way to fix this guy. And suddenly the guy was normal again. And he said it's kind of like taking the soul and putting an energy in it and then putting the soul back into the person. And I was sitting there, I was watching the whole thing, and it's like, I was shaking my head, and I was like, this is so bullshit. Because I saw that it was a show. I could tell that this is just another flavor of what these TV ministers do. It's a con act. It's con artistry. It's charlatan. And I was using Lakota Star knowledge because in Lakota Star knowledge it teaches that the body can only have one soul. There's no way a second soul could come in. It's not possible because the body is not designed that way. So when he was saying that he was taking this guy's soul out and then putting his soul in and then fixing the body and then coming out and putting the other guy's soul in, it didn't make sense because the soul can only be in one body at a time. So, and if it leaves like this, what happens next is death. So that means there's no going back. And what about the soul of the sick person? What happened there? You see what I mean? It just didn't make sense in Lakota concepts. So I started to think about this and I was like, okay, what I see behind this is manipulation. That this is not healing. Because the healing is coming from nature. It's coming from what we call Tungashilapi. These are spirit helpers. They're very loving. And they're the ones who are doing it. A real healer has no power. A real healer has absolutely no power whatsoever. A healer is a tool. He's an instrument, or she is an instrument. Nothing more. The people who are doing the healing are these Tunkashilapi. Let me define that word because some people might not know what that is. In the Lakota Star Knowledge, when this earth was being created, for one thing, we don't have a God. There is no God. But what there are organizations. They all have the same name, Hunka. This is not God. This is not the Great Spirit. These are organizations. And they're filled with all kinds of people. They're male, they're female. One is androgynous, has no gender. Another one is like a hermaphrodite. It's a male and a female at the same time. See, this conflicts, it contradicts the Bible. So this is why in the early days of the reservation, the priests were saying that this is evil. So we're going to say Hunka is God. And that brainwashing was effective. So if you go on a reservation today and you ask old people what's Hunka mean, 99% of the time they're going to say God, the Christian God. But that's incorrect. In the beginning of this earth, there was a time period where the members of this first Hunka created special creations and they watch over them. And one group of these new creations were called Tungang. Original creation. That's what that means. Tungang. And another name for them was Tungashi. That was another one. The word Tungashi comes from Tunga and another word. It shows how they developed into these loving, helpful beings. And in Lakota language, whenever something is really special, it means something to you in a very loving way. You add the suffix la at the end. So Tungashi became Tungashi la. Very grandfatherly, lovingly. That's Tungashi la. That's not God. See, a lot of Christian Indians, that's another word they use for God, is Tungashi la. But that's not God, that's these spirit helpers. Now the plural in Lakota, in English you have a S or an ES. In Lakota it's Pi. So when you're talking about a group of these spirit helpers, then it's Tungashilapi. That's how it's said in Lakota. So the Tungashilapi are the healers. It's not the humans. We have no power to do that. We're not designed for that. But what some of us are designed for is to be instruments for these Tungashilapi. They're the ones doing the work. So when they choose you to be a healer, you're now a servant for the rest of your life. So you're not above the people. The people do not worship you. You're below the people. You are the servant of the people now. That's the Lakota way. But in the Western way, like these shamans that I was talking about, these European shamans, see, they're the complete opposite. They see themselves as above everybody else. And they think that they have power, but they don't. But they try to give the impression that they do. It's just another version of Christianity is all it is. So that's what I noticed among this group of people. So when this Hungarian guy, this guy who was putting this seminar on, when he was saying he's going to remove the soul from that person, that is not possible because we don't have that capability. That's the first violation. So everything else falls apart. The rest of his story falls apart. Because he says he's taking the soul out, cleansing it, and then he puts his soul into that sick person's body, fixes the sick part, comes out, and puts the sick person's soul back in there. This is what he was saying. And I just said, bullshit. This is all bullshit. That's not the way. Because this is really disrespectful to the real healers, which are these Tungashilapi. They're the ones who do it. So what these shamans do is they consider themselves more than human, above everybody else. That's the same thing that priests do. That Christian priests, they do the same thing. Considering themselves above, better than normal people. When you have that kind of thinking, there is no healing in that, because that's oppression. So this is how I knew that these guys are they're like a bunch of kids who never grew up. And they're playing. But they really think that what they're saying is real, but it's not. What these shamans were doing, they were also trying to teach that when you are really a good person, that when you just being around a person who's sick, that you can heal that person like that. It's a nice thought. But the thing is, with a lot of these kind of belief systems, they really focus on spiritual well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being. But they're missing one part. In duality, there's always a missing part. And that's what makes it unhealthy. And that missing part is emotional well-being. That you have to have that. And in duality, it doesn't exist. So this is where it gets dangerous. That if a person is only focusing on these three parts and is trying to send energy into a sick person, this energy is unhealthy. Even though this person is very spiritual, has a clean mind, and is physically fit, their communication is still unhealthy because the emotional development is not there. So when a person just takes care of themselves, body, mind, soul, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to go influence the world. I'm going to go to all the sick people, put my hands on their head, and send healing energy into their bodies. It's just by my presence alone that I'm going to influence them to heal. This is not going to work. I guarantee you it's not going to work. Because the emotional development is not there. And when you're emotionally developed, you learn that to do this is oppression. So you don't do it because you don't force energy into something that's sick. You have to do something different. You have to get the person to open up somehow. That includes establishing a relation. Again, we're looking at Hunka. So it's a ceremonial thing. This is another reason why we used to do Hunka ceremony, was to heal somebody. So that you make them a relative. It has to be okay with both families. Both families have to be okay with this, because even though it's just one guy or one gal adopting another, the whole families are part of it too. So the person who's sick, then a person will say, okay, we're going to adopt him. We're going to do this Hunka ceremony, so he's a relative. So they're forming a new union here. And as they exchange shirts or clothes, also they're going to receive new names because of this, because this is a part of the bringing two families together. There's going to be a certain time set apart that during that ceremony, the healing energy from one family is going to flow into the one who's sick. It's going to be guided. And then these Tunkasilapi are the ones who are going to do the healing. So the adopting family is not the one healing. They're just sending their love into this person as energy. But the persons who are doing the actual healing are these Tunkasilapi through this ceremony. That's how they doctor that person. That's another way. That's how they did Hunka. So they don't take person's soul out, because once you do that, the person's dead. And you don't force anything into that person. Hence this ceremony and the asking of permission. I would like to adopt you. Are you okay with that? I want to adopt you as my brother, my sister, my father, my mother. Whatever generation you're in, you adopt that person accordingly. And if they say, okay, my family's okay with it, see, now you're giving permission. The person who's sick is giving permission to the other family to join. And so then the families are okay with that. Once they're okay with that, then the ceremony happens as I explained. And then this is a special kind of Hunka, because this one is going to involve healing a sick person. So you see, you don't just force something into somebody, because that's invasion. Even if your intentions are good, even if you're saying that, this is like, it's just like we have to clean it out right away. You can't just go in there and do it. You have to have some type of permission. You have to have an understanding with that person, that sick person and their family, so that they're okay with it. So that when these energies are sent in, that it's not an invasion, that it's doing it, accepting, the other family is accepting it. They're okay with it. They've granted permission for that to happen. Then healing can happen. Because that's respect. If you just force something in, that's disrespect. And then we come back to these principles, like, since reality begins within, however you are is going to reflect in the way you communicate. And communication is a two-way street. It's not just doing things and saying things. No, it's receiving. When you look at something, how do you interpret that? When you touch something, how does that make you feel? When you smell and taste something, how does that make you feel? See, that's receiving information. How you do that is also communication. Do you hear or do you really listen? They're two different things. One has more focus. So how you communicate reflects what kind of person you are. So, if you force something, even if you have good intentions, if you force energy into somebody, no matter how sick they are, you're disrespecting that person. And how you are to others is how you are to yourself. That's a natural law of projection and reflection, which means you do not respect yourself either. Because if you did, you wouldn't do that. See, all these things fit together. This Hunka thing, making a relative, is a really beautiful thing. And it can be done for healing too, as I just explained here. And it all comes down to that aspect that everything inside of you is connected, just like you are connected to everything around you. This is Mitakuye Oyasi. And today, most people only understand half that definition. They say, all my relations, but when they say that, all they're regarding is that which is around them. They don't realize that it also has to do with everything inside of you, inside of them. Inside of you is a universe, and everything is connected, just like you're connected to everything around you. So how you nurture the universe inside of you is going to reflect itself in how you treat all creation around you. This is the complete definition of Mitakuye Oyasi. So then when you're looking at this Hunka ceremony, so you want to be respectful about that. That's why you ask permission. We would say, this I would like to adopt this guy as my brother or this lady as my sister. Is this okay with your family? See, this is something you only do this in special situations when you don't know them. Like with the Ree guys that told you in the story. They didn't know who they were, but they did the ceremony, but they asked them first, is that going to be okay with you? And they said, yeah. So for special things, you still have to ask permission. But in other situations, you have to know that person a long time, that you trust each other. Every situation is different concerning this ceremony. But everything has the same foundation in that permission must be given. You cannot just force that onto somebody. So you don't just say, I'm going to put energy into that person, whether he likes it or not. He'll thank me later. That's not going to work because that is oppression. This is a Lakota concept. This is a Lakota perspective, and it's hard for lots of people to understand. That's the reason why. I love it. I love these ways. No matter how difficult they are, I love them. But see, in Lakota, difficult is not a bad thing. It's a learning thing. But in English, it's a bad thing. Yeah, see, when you're speaking Lakota, you have to know how to think in Lakota. Because what one word means in one culture means a different thing in another culture. You have to be aware of that. So when you're dealing with healing, you always have to ask permission. You don't just force yourself onto them. And number one, you need to be emotionally well, which means you have to be at peace with everything from your past. If not, then you have a problem. That's difficult. But it's not impossible to come to peace with.
To read more about Lakota Star Knowledge spirituality, you can read my book called Wichocha Otechike. You can see the book cover on the right side of this screen. This book contains the information to what I talk about on my Lakota spirituality videos. To purchase this book, please click below where it says Show More. Clicking on that link will open up the description below, and there you will see a link called To Purchase My Books. As you will see, it's an eBay link. Click on that eBay link, and there you will see the information to get this book. Lila Pila Mayelo. Thank you very much.